Focus on mental health this month.
Comedian Robin Williams was found dead this morning in what the Sheriff's Department calls an apparent suicide.
Inadequate provision.
Worsening outcome.
We've not done enough
Increasing the number of people committing suicide.
of mental
If you're
health.
that depressed, reach out to someone. And remember, suicide is a permanent solution to temporary problems.
In 2020, it was reported that 1 in 4 of the United Kingdom's 67.22 million occupants were suffering with some kind of mental illness. This roughly equates to 16.8 million living amongst us, living empty. Mental illness is a broad term that encapsulates everything from the more extreme areas of psychosis to addiction and anger management. It is a universal demon that transcends any single generation or era. It is something that almost all of us will face in some way, shape or form during our lives. With the advent of the COVID-19 virus, there has been a dramatic rise in the number of recorded cases of depression and anxiety. Before the outbreak, in pre-March 2019, it was estimated 9.7% of the UK had sought help due to symptoms of depression or anxiety. With the mass lockdowns that were administered upon the entire country, in which people were confined to their homes and instructed to keep away from other people, this almost doubled according to the Office for National Statistics. While understanding and awareness of mental health has advanced greatly, with celebrities and public figures even speaking out about their own experiences, for many, a social stigma still persists.
When she left, she took me, Mark, which I brought up from 6 months. Chelsea went with her. Reese, who's got learning difficulties, he wanted to stay, so he stayed. But I'd been working 72 hours in a betting shop a week. I'd got people around me. I'd come home from work. I'd have Chelsea and her friends playing Just Dance. You've had all these people around you, and all of a sudden you want to come home to a quiet house and have something to eat. But I never did. I'd got her prancing around in my living room. So she left, Mum left, they all left, and it was me and Reese. The house went to a morgue. It was dead quiet, and I lost it. And I didn't want to be here.
For Andy Davies, 54, a lifelong sufferer of anxiety and depression, isolation has been the shadow that has haunted his day-to-day life.
And I'd be driving, and I've just got tears rolling down my face. I wasn't particularly sad. I definitely wasn't happy, but I wasn't sad. I felt lonely, and you got no one. You just got no one to understood what you was actually going through.
Andy's troubles have only been deepened since the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic. For people like Andy, who suffer from depression, it is common for 6 particular traits to manifest according to WebMD. Social withdrawal. The biggest indicator of depression, social withdrawal, almost always serves to significantly worsen symptoms. Rumination. Otherwise known as overthinking. Rumination is when one's own mind overanalyzes and misconstrues even the smallest action. This is a vicious cycle. This is something sufferers like Andy often struggle to break. Self-medication, be it through alcohol or drugs, a lack of exercise or outdoor contact, and a penchant for seeking out sugar and other forms of highs are all pitfalls, which sufferers often fall prey to. and that serve to create a negative environment within one's own body. This all contributes to the feeling of shutting down that encompasses a depressive episode. In times like these, many sufferers find themselves considering extreme measures as a way of escape.
I felt like there was no moving past what I was currently experiencing, and the only way I'd be free of the pain was death.
I was 15 the first time I took a blade to my wrists. There was no one I could turn to, no one who wanted to know. I was trapped in the dark pit of my own mind, and suicide seemed like the only escape.
After the breakdown of his long-term relationship, Andy found himself in this exact position.
I never grieved for my mum and stepdad. So of course when the house went quiet, I'd get in flashbacks and whatever. And I say, my son never stayed because he's got learning difficulties. That was the only thing every morning I woke up saying he needs me. And that was, I wouldn't be here. I'd even got on top of the flats in opposite the council, ready to jump off. I got nothing. Didn't want, you just get up and your brain's dead.
When poor past experiences pile up, any future endeavours can seem hopeless. These negative thoughts all serve to enforce a belief that happiness is unachievable, but this is not true. While depression may seem it, it's not a tunnel without light.
Medication has transformed my life. It is no longer a struggle to get out of bed in the morning.
My mental well-being has been positively influenced by therapy, as it's helped me get beyond my anxiety issues.
This is something that Andy found out for himself.
You see these psychiatrists and that, and like I say, a lot of people say they're wasting money and this, that and the other. I don't think so. There might be some that are useless. But if you get the right psychiatrist, I mean, she looked pretty much like my mum, to be honest. It was a bit weird. It was like talking to my mum. She was very understanding. She listens, and if your voice changes on a certain thing as you're talking to her, she sort of writ something down, then she sort of brought that back to say, well, you seem to be a bit blah blah when you was talking about it. Can you explain why? So you knew she was listening. It doesn't matter what it was about, but you knew she was listening, and that meant the world to me.
With mental health swiftly becoming an epidemic, many who seek out professional help have found the system falling short. 71.4% of the mental health sufferers who participated in our survey believed the mental health services at their disposal were inadequate.
My therapist was useless. She was exhausted, unmotivated. It was like she lacked the energy to feign even a modicum of interest in my issues and the struggles I was going through.
The wait time is crazy long, and when you're in crisis they talk to you in a voice like you're a 3-year-old.
She was always very, very quiet and withdrawn. But my mum, in later years, my dad got dementia, and it dragged my mum down until she ended up going to into hospital, where they gave her electric shock treatment. And the doctors said to me then that although, you know, people thought it had been outlawed really, it was still extremely useful in some cases of anxiety and depression. And my mum had one session of it. And
recovery is a journey, one that can be travelled multiple times throughout a person's life. For some, the road can be rocky, for others smooth, but ultimately it is one that has undergone a dramatic transformation through recent years.
Yeah, and it's it's not like that now, is it? So many celebrities have come out and talked about their mental health problems. Denise Welsh talks about it a lot on TV, Stephen Fry.
While it is possible to speak to someone now, this was not always the case.
Yeah, there was, we called her auntie. She wasn't really an auntie, but it's sort of something people did back then. And as a child, I always thought she was a little bit strange. But she had a boyfriend and something went wrong and she tried to kill herself. And of course it was a criminal act then. So she was locked away. And we heard her. We heard the screaming and the begging not to be taken away, but she was taken away and put in what they called an asylum then.
Until the Suicide Act of 1961, it was illegal for one to attempt to take their own life in the United Kingdom. In 1956, 5,387 people tried and 613 were prosecuted. 33 of those were sent to prison with sentences ranging from a week to 6 months.
I feel like it's an interrogation.
Joan Winters, 79, has been struggling with her mental health almost her entire life. She has her own story, but has almost always struggled to speak out, until recently.
I got married and I had my first baby and everything was absolutely fine. When I had the second baby, I suffered from postnatal depression. It's horrible. And as somebody said, it was like falling into a very deep black hole and not being able to get out of it. And that lasted for 3 years.
Postnatal depression affects 1 in 10 women in the UK within the first 12 months of giving birth. Although it is more common for women to suffer, it is also able to affect the partner or significant other with whom the baby is birthed.
I'd got 2 babies, so I'd got to look after them. I did sort of ask for some help then. I did. Well, everybody said, you need to go and get some help. And I was given Valium, Librium, and I couldn't take them because you feel like a zombie. I just stopped taking them. I couldn't function. I couldn't look after. You have to find some strength from somewhere to sort of go against what your brain is telling you to do.
While Joan's experience with postnatal depression impacted her deeply, it also resurfaced another demon of hers, one she's been battling her entire life: obsessive compulsive disorder, otherwise known as OCD. This condition is thought to impact 12 in every 1,000 people. Often beginning in childhood or young adolescence, it is a disorder that can eat away huge chunks of its victims' lives.
It sounds really silly, but it's all, OCD is sort of, you have to do things a certain number of times, and I would switch the light on and I would switch it on 3 times. It had to be 3 times. And my mum would tell me off. It got to the point where I was walking over a bridge one day and I looked down and I thought it would be easier if I just jumped off there, because the thoughts that you have are so dark and so hurtful that you think because of something you may not do, your mum could really suffer. But you learn to control it, and you do learn to control it because you know that what you're doing and what you're thinking is not right. And for years it'll be fine. I would occasionally do whatever it was I wasn't supposed to do, you know what I mean? I wouldn't switch the light on 3 times and nothing happened. Nothing horrible happened. So you push that a little bit further and a little bit further.
In sufferers, OCD triggers repetitive compulsions, behaviours and thoughts. Locking doors, cleaning, hand washing, turning off lights and switches. These are all impulses that can seem impossible to resist.
The first problems I had, I was 15. And I'd left school, which she did at 15 then. And my mum was really quite poorly. So I was worried about leaving her. Because from going from school, I went into a sort of office in a factory where I was working quite long hours. So I was really worried. And it was a bit of a shock leaving school and going into that situation where you had to clock in and you were given 2 minutes to go to the toilet. And I started to get really anxious. And one of the jobs I had to do was to collate papers together and pin them. And that's when it started. I found that the pin had to be in exactly the right place. And I had to pin it 3 times. If I didn't do all of that, something horrible was going to happen to my mum, and she wouldn't be there when I got home. So that's when it started. And for the next 3 years, I was absolutely fine. And the trigger has always been when something traumatic has happened.
While Joan has ultimately been able to live a fulfilling life in spite of these challenges, the shadow of OCD has never left her.
It's still there. It's still there, the OCD. But I have learned to control it. The therapist I saw when my mum died said I was trying to keep my family safe with magic. And that makes you stop and think, really, that that's probably true. And what she said was, don't do what your brain's telling you to do, which is what I'd done all along. I tried to sort of take those thoughts away. And I do that. I do that now, and it's always there. It never goes away. But it's lessened, and I can understand it, and I know that if I don't do what my brain's telling me to do, nothing horrible will happen. And over the years, it's transferred. It started with my mum because she was poorly, I suppose, and I wanted to keep her safe and I wanted her to be well. Then when I got married and had my children, it was my children was the focus of it.
Unfortunately, for those among us who are living empty, whether it be depression, anxiety, OCD, or some other mental illness entirely, this is a burden that must be shouldered. While it is important to confront this reality head-on and to strive and advocate for change, it is also vital to reflect on how far we've come and remember those that have fought and sacrificed so much to bring us so far.